And here we are with a very nice representation of what the finished airplane is going to look like. Here's a Douglas World Cruiser, and on the front is that radiator that Bob was talking about. Could you tell us a little bit about that big looking radiator on the front of that airplane?
Well, it actually is pretty big. The original radiator was about 135 pounds. It was brass, and actually they had it shined up pretty good. It had cooling louvers on it, and it will set right here and kind of arch across the engine. Actually, if you want to hold that model,
sure.
I've got about to go to the welders. We're working on the test stand, and I wanted to take these pieces over to make sure we had the spacing correct. But these are the saddles, so the radiator will set out here and come up like this. So the radiator is quite large, and it'll set right there. So here's your radiator. I'll take the prop off. We can do this on camera. So there's your large water-filled radiator. They did put a little alcohol in it to keep it from freezing in Alaska. As you can see, it's on floats in this model, and on the top it was painted yellow. Number 1 would be the number of Seattle, which was the command ship. The Chicago was number 2, the Boston number 3, and the New Orleans number 4. So you can see that different colors. These lines on the tail were called drift lines, and so they could shoot lines from the back seat and determine if the plane was drifting across the landscape and at what speed it was drifting, so they could navigate knowing that they had to head into the wind to keep it from drifting off course.
Now, GPS in today's day and age will not have those calculations.
Yeah, well, when you're flying in today's international environment, 2 things are important: communications and navigation. There's a lot of expectations for you to be accurate in your reports, where you are and when you're going to be to your next checkpoint. So anyway, I'll put the model up here.
Okay. So now you were saying that the original radiator was brass, but that you're also incorporating an aluminum core, which...
Yeah, we're using a modern aluminum core, which will actually lighten up the radiator. So far, we've got about 20 pounds lighter, but it's not quite finished, so we'll see in the end. So, which will affect actually the weight and balance of the airplane. So, all these little changes, very subtle as they are, but we'll have to take all that into the weight and balance calculations.
Now, this massive undertaking, how much time, how many years have you been into this process?
I don't know if I want to talk about that.
No, just curious.
Well, it sounds like I'm crazy or something. I've been working on this for 10 years. A bunch of that time has gone into research. I've been to the Smithsonian 9 or 10 times over that time period. I've been to the Air Force Museum 3 or 4 times. I've been to the crash site of the original airplane in Alaska. I've been to the museum in Alaska 3 times where the wreckage of this is. I've been to the Air Force Academy. I've been just numerous museums, Southern California, to visit the airplane down there. So a lot of traveling and research, collecting the drawings to build the airplane, and then just the history. And you start researching the airplane, and then you become more and more fascinated with the individuals and what their lives were, not only during the trip, but what happened to them later. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting. I think the history is one of the high points of it for me. And of course, building the airplane, you've got to study the structural history and what the trip was about, and also what the strong points of the engine were and where they had some troubles, and try to correct those.
So it sounds to me like you're the builder, the historian, you're the researcher, you're pretty much the all-around expert when it comes to the Douglas World Cruiser, it would appear to me.
Well, I've put a lot of interest into it and study it. Yeah, I can't read an article without making corrections.
I love it. Well, after building your
even
own,
the experts' books, you know. But the problem is, it's where you dip your toe in the ocean, so to speak. You know, if you're in the tropics, it's warm. If you're in the Arctic, it's cold. History is the same way. If you look at some of the statistics early on, what you'll see is they gave, for instance, the fuel capacity. The prototype was designed to carry 600 gallons. And people read that and they say, well, there it is, 600 gallons. But they didn't fly around the world with 600 gallons. The plane had been changed by that point to 449.5 gallons. Right. And so, you know, there's a lot of pitfalls. But you have to know the whole story to get it right. And sometimes people, like I say, just put their toe in part of the ocean.
right?
It's a big world and a big ocean.
And obviously the airplane changed as the trip went along. And also you were mentioning to me that as it left the design board and made it down to the floor for construction, things such as the rudder changed.
Yeah.
There were certain changes along the way that weren't actually recorded in the actual plans themselves.
Right. We built the rudder according to the drawings and ended up, it didn't fit the airplane. It wasn't a major alteration, but built as designed didn't fit. So, and I went back and looked at the Chicago, and in fact, they didn't build it the way they drew it either, because it didn't fit then either. So there's little surprises like that, but you know, the horizontal stabilizer, when they flew the plane for the first time, it was tail heavy, and they corrected it by changing the angle of incidence. And I only learned about that by reading Major Martin's diary. So, you know, not everything is a engineering fact. Sometimes you have to go into the personal side of the story to find these things out. And checking in it and looking at the Chicago, you could see that in fact they had changed that, because I had the original drawings for the first fitting. And then later, I at the Smithsonian, I found the correct drawing, or the corrected drawing, which verified my calculation. And so, yeah, it keeps the juices flowing.
Sounds like a thing of passion, like aviation is. It's a thing of passion. And we're going to go over to the wings and talk a little bit more about this airplane, and also about what it's going to take to make this historic flight as far as physical terms.